Hi guys, this is Jake at Canadian Cutting Edge. It's a sort of cool, cloudy day today right now. It's only about 9 a.m. in the morning, and I'm looking at my first knife from Kubey. Kubey is a brand that's been around for a little while, several years at least. I'm not sure how long. I haven't researched it too deeply. And they've been making knives that I think are mostly knives you've seen before. Do you recognize this knife? Kubey contacted me and asked me if I would like to review any of their knives. I've had a few of my viewers talk to me ever since I first started the channel saying, why aren't you looking at Kubey knives? And it's just that I didn't have a good place to find them. And now, there are more. It's more available than it was before. And Kubey contacted me and said, could we send you a knife to review? And I said, sure, send me a knife to review. And this is what they sent me. Those of you who are San Renmu fans, you may have seen this before. This looks very much like the San Renmu 7074. Oh, well, we're going to take a good look at this knife. We're going to review it. We're going to talk about this nice frame lock, all steel construction, Sandvic 12C27 blade, hollow grind, nice little recurve, a nice flame anodized edges on there. So if you're interested at all in this knife, stick around for the full review. One of the first things that I want to talk about this knife is that whole question. Somebody's going to say in the comments below, oh, it's a clone, they're copying, blah, blah, blah. I don't think so. I think what's going on here, and I'm very confident of this, is something that goes on in the marketplace all over the place in all kinds of different industries, certainly in the knife industry. You've got a knife that's made by one company and they put their own brand on it. And then they also go and sell that knife to other companies and allow them to put their brands on it. And I firmly believe that's what's going on right here. Kubey has got a license to sell this knife, to put their own name on it, and that's what they're doing. I believe, and although Kubey didn't tell me, but I believe this knife is, it's just kind of obvious to me that it's made by San Renmu. It's identical to my 7074. The only difference being is, mine had the gold kind of coppery colored anodization instead of the flame anodization on the sides there. It's the same knife, same steel, Sandvic 12C27, exact same action, exact same pocket clip. It's the exact same knife, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's legitimately done, and it's a good knife. I like this knife. It fits my hand fairly well. It is a smaller knife. Men with extra large hands are going to find this knife a little bit small. My hands are, they're large, but they are borderline with extra large. And I can use this knife quite well. I can get some control even with my pinky on there, and and work this knife and use it in a lot of different grips and enjoy it a lot. And it just works quite well in so many different ways. I like the thumb ramp here with the sharpening choil on, not sharpening choil, the thumb ramp with the jimping on it. It works with the thumb quite well. There is a sharpening choil on the blade right there, and that's quite nice. We've got hollow grind. We've got a bit of a recurve right there. Drop point here, swedge there, thumb studs, open pillar construction, nice little hourglass shaped pillars on there that look quite good. And I think there's enough light in that picture. Decent knife. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Let's give you the specs, and then we'll move on to something else. Starting with the blade. Already said Sandvic 12C27. That's got a Rockwell hardness of around 58, 57, something like that. And the thickness of the blade, it's about 2.2 millimeters. I'm measuring by eye, putting a ruler up next to it. 2.2 millimeters is close to about 3/32, something like that. under 1/8 of an inch anyway. The length of the blade from the end of the handle to the tip of the blade is the same as the cutting edge. We've got 6.8 centimeters, 2 5/8 of an inch, something like that, thickness behind the grind. It is a decent thickness for a small folding knife like this. It functions very well. It cuts just great. And keeping on with the dimensions here, handle dimensions, we've got a handle length of 9 centimeters, 3.5 inches. The grip area from that point to that point right there is 7.3 centimeters, 2 7/8 of an inch. The thickness of the handle is about 9 millimeters, just a bit less than 3/8 of an inch, around 11/32, something like that. I don't have the weight available right now. I'll put it on the bottom of the screen right here. If it's not an excessively heavy knife because it's small, but it is all steel frame lock construction, so it does have a certain amount of weight to it. You just can't avoid that. So that's the main specs. Let's talk about some more of the details. We've got a pocket clip, which is right side only, tip down. We've got about 1 inch that it sits out of your pocket, a little bit less than 1 inch. About 1.6 centimeters, something like that. And so it shows a little bit in the pocket. The grip on the pocket clip is very good. And the pocket clip functions as an over travel stop as well right there. So you can't move this frame lock too far to weaken that pivot point. So that's a good thing. What do we have inside here? I believe we've got 2 metal washers in there. I really like to go inside knives and show you guys. Most reviewers don't do that, and I want to be the guy who shows you all the details. Let's talk about the alignment of everything. When the knife is open, the lockup here, it's right around, 60, 65, 70% lockup. I like to see it a little bit earlier on a brand new knife, but that's not bad. It still has a lot of life in it. It's going to last for quite a while. It works very well. Lockup is solid. No blade play back and forth, up and down, nothing like that. And when you close the knife, the alignment of the blade, it's a little bit off. Nothing significant, nothing bad at all. It's a pretty good blade alignment. Again, we're talking about a knife that's not super expensive, and so I don't ask it to be perfect. Some guys want their budget knives to be perfect. I'm being realistic. I don't think so. I think a budget knife is exactly what it is. It's a budget knife, and therefore I don't want them to cut corners, but I don't expect them to make everything absolutely perfect either. And this knife does that. It's not absolutely perfect, but I don't think they cut any corners. Fit and finish is quite good. For those of you who are wondering how they get this flame anodization on just the edges of the blade here, of the handle here, that's because they flame anodize the whole thing, and then they just go back and they resand the face of the handle. And so then you've got a nice satin face on the handle and a cool looking edge. And that's how they do that. And that's why you can see it very clearly right there on the anodization on this little cutout for the spring action on the frame lock, that it's all satin here, but you've got nice color in that little cutout section. That's how that's done. All Torx construction, I like that. I like this nice texture that they put on the lock release on the frame lock. I think you can see it from that angle right there. So when you get your thumb in there, it's really easy to engage properly. It's like a form of jimping, and unlock the knife very, very easily and confidently. You don't even have to look at it, and it just works very well. And one-handed, it works quite well. And left-handed, I can actuate this knife quite well too. I will say that the assembly of this, they tightened the pivot screw a little bit too much, and so it doesn't have excellent flicking action, but as you can see, I can get it to flick. It's a little bit tighter than I'd like it to be, and I'll be loosening that off, and I'll be putting lubrication in there and everything. I think it's a little bit dry. I think the detent ball needs a little bit of oil on it, so when it slides on the edge of the blade there at the pivot point, it will slide a little more smoothly. So I'll get that done after I'm finished with the video. I just want to let you guys know what a knife is like from the factory, and so that your experience will be the same fundamentally as my experience. And once you get your knife home, especially if you buy a budget knife, I think you should expect to do some minor maintenance. That is normal for a low budget knife. So you do want to add a little lubrication. You do want to, adjust the pivot screw to your, preferences. And that should be expected. That should be considered normal for a budget knife, in my opinion. Your opinions may vary, and that's just fine. A few more details on this thing. The thumb stud placement is quite good. It's not getting in the way, like when you're cutting something. Some knives have got the thumb stud coming out too far over the blade, and then when you cut through something, the product will catch on the thumb stud. This is pretty good. And when the knife is closed, you can see that thumb stud is right in the middle of this cutout right here. So it's really easy to get at that thumb stud to, deploy the blade. Really good for that. I like that. This knife is a pleasure to use. It's, a comfortable little knife. I do like that they left some flats here. My TS Prof system can lock onto that so I can sharpen it. Lansky, all of those kinds of systems, no problem. The recurve is not so significant that it's hard to sharpen, so I like that. Very minor kind of recurve. It's a cool, nice little knife. Let's see how well it cuts. I've got some light paper here. This is lighter than most copy paper. I don't expect it to be perfect because I'm going to sharpen this myself later on. I've used this knife for a little while. I've done not a lot of hard cutting, but I've done some hard cutting. I've cut a few, zip ties and stuff like that. But as far as the paper goes, it cuts really, really well. Something a little bit lighter, this newsprint maybe. Let's see how well that cuts. See, that cuts just fine as well. No problems getting a nice cut. It's a good, strong, everyday kind of carry knife. If you're looking for a little EDC that's got a little bit of flash to it, this is a good choice. It fits really well, feels really good. It's under your 3 inches, 7.6 centimeters. It's under that limit if you are required to have a knife a little bit shorter, although it does have a lock. So, whatever laws you have in your area, try to follow them as best you can. That's just a suggestion. Do what you want. It's your life. I like this knife. If you're looking for a knife by Kubey and you want something small, you can consider this. I'll put some links in the description below of where you can find this knife. Hopefully I can find some links. Thank you to Kubey for sending this knife to me. I'm enjoying it. It's a good little thing. Remember, guys, to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that other good stuff. And mostly, when you're using a knife, cut towards your chum and not your thumb.